Oh shit, here we go again.
Yes, I know that I've already made a video claiming that Chris is a knight, as well as another video making the same argument for Gaster, but I promise you that DESS being the knight is far more plausible than it might seem at first glance. And ironically enough, everything is still kind of Gaster's doing. So not only would DESS being the knight not contradict my previous theory, but it would actually work together with it. So just to quickly recapitulate, here's the evidence that I presented in my Gaster theory. Old archives of the Deltarune.com website show that it had hidden images with Wingding's text as early as 2015. Placeholder text in the game's code references Gaster. Gaster's name is the only one we can't use in Deltarune. The garbage noise we hear when using our cell phone in the dark world is the same noise we hear when accessing Room Gaster in the Undertale. The person who announced the game on Undertale's Twitter spoke just like Gaster, using all caps and even using one of his signature phrases. The person who guided us through the creation of the vessel spoke in the same way. The experiment Gaster describes in entry number 17 was something that created darkness, just like the fountains. Like I said in my previous video, my overarching theory is that Gaster's experiment is what connected Undertale and Deltarune, since it creates darkness just like the fountains, and also messes with time and space, so it could potentially connect parallel universes, and I believe that we're playing as one of the two monsters assisting Gaster, whom we hear about in entry number 17. The full video where I explain all of this in more detail will be linked in the description if you'd like to watch it. And while all of this is already very strong evidence that Gaster is an important player in the Deltarune narrative, it doesn't necessarily lead to the conclusion that only he could possibly be the knight. For example, let's assume that Gaster did connect the Undertale and Deltarune universes by creating the first dark fountain, the one in the supply closet, which is why that's the only legitimate fountain where all the Darkners can survive. Yet the monster who's creating new fountains could be someone else entirely, like a monster from Deltarune itself who somehow found out that they can create new dark worlds by stabbing the ground. So it's at least possible that someone other than Gaster is the knight, even if he's the one who started this whole adventure. But if the knight is another character, I don't think it'll be some random new monster whom we've never heard about nor had any clues that could help us identify them. Instead, I think that they would be the other assistant that we hear about in entry number 17. Remember how I mentioned that we're likely playing as one of Gaster's assistants? Well, that leaves the question, where is the other one? Are they still in the Undertale universe, perhaps monitoring everything behind the scenes? That's certainly possible, but it's also possible that Gaster is the one who stayed behind, hence why he was the one who called us to play Deltarune and guided us through the vessel scene. He's still in the lab, monitoring and guiding us through everything, and his other assistant was actually his first test subject, entering the Deltarune universe and doing Gaster's bidding, just like we did. But what does all of this have to do with DESS, I hear you asking? Well, think about our own experience so far as one of Gaster's assistants. Apparently we were supposed to enter the Deltarune world with a vessel that we created for ourselves, yet we inadvertently got connected to Chris. What if something similar happened to Gaster's other assistant, where they accidentally got connected to DESS? I'll admit that this is mostly speculation, but seriously entertain this possibility for a moment. Wouldn't it make a lot of sense? It's been implied several times that DESS is going to be an important player in this narrative. There's the whole cutscene with Noelle talking about her childhood, then there's the Birdly cutscene where the word December made Noelle lose the spelling bee, DESS seemingly just disappeared one day for no apparent reason, and when visiting Rudy in the hospital he tells us that Noelle and DESS made an angel doll, with the symbol of the angel obviously being very important to both the Undertale and Deltarune narratives. Rosa even outright tells us that we have to banish the angel's heaven to save the world. All of this can be explained by DESS being the knight because she was possessed by Gaster's assistant, much like what happened between us and Chris. So the assistant enters the Deltarune universe, gets connected to DESS, and they leave to do their own thing and open new fountains. Of course, this theory also has its shortcomings. For starters, we must consider the fact that there are still other reasonable explanations for why DESS might have disappeared. While I think that DESS being the knight would connect neatly with the other evidence and narratives we have going on in the game, Toby may simply intend for the narrative surrounding Noelle and DESS to be something entirely separate, and not really connected to the knight. The narrative can still work just fine if someone else is the knight. Besides Gaster himself being a solid candidate like I argued in my previous video, his assistant could also simply be connected to another Deltarune character whom we haven't met. Or the knight is actually just some resident of Hometown who isn't possessed, and instead they discovered that they can open fountains by stabbing the ground, and have their own motivations for why they're doing so. Another important caveat is the fact that if DESS really was possessed, it's kind of hard to reconcile the timeline of events in the game. We can infer from Birdly's cutscene that DESS has been missing for at least a few years. Both him and Noelle were a lot smaller during the spelling bee, and Noelle freaked out after hearing the word December, because her sister had already disappeared. Plus, Bradley says that Noel has been helping him study for multiple years. All of this begs the question, if DESS really did get possessed and disappeared because of this, what has Gaster's assistant been doing this whole time? Were they dilly-dallying around for several years before opening a fountain? Or did they open the first dark fountain in the supply closet a long time ago and no one noticed until now? Also, where have they been hiding during this whole time? There's also the problem that only the first fountain is made out of pure darkness, as Rosie put it, and for some reason all the Darkners can only survive under the dark fountain that's in the supply closet, which could imply that the first fountain was either opened by a different person or that it was opened using a different method. Maybe there is some straightforward explanation for all of this that I just can't quite figure out. But right now it looks like DESS being the Knight creates a lot of inconsistencies regarding the timeline of events, which is why, although I think it's a theory worth considering and discussing, I still believe that Gaster is a better candidate overall, or at the very least that both Gaster and his assistant have been creating dark fountains using different methods. The narrative gets more and more complicated the more you analyze it, really. So what do you think? Were you convinced that DESS is the Knight? Or do you think another character is better for the role? Let me know what you think in the comments, because tomorrow when the new chapters release we may already get our answer.